Hi everyone, welcome to Wreaths by Marguerite. My name is Marguerite and I'm here to teach you how to make one of these lovely storm door wreaths. So stay tuned and you'll learn how to make these. What is a storm door wreath? It's also affectionately called the pancake wreath. The reason being is that when you look at it from the front, it looks big and fluffy, but it's super thin when you look at it from the side. It's less than 4 inches deep, so it allows you to place one of these beautiful wreaths creations on your front door if you have a storm door or screen door. It allows you to close the door without smushing the wreath because you have 4 inches of space between those doors. And this comes in just under 4 inches. There is no big fluffy bow, but there is still tons of ribbon on it, which makes it just as attractive, if not more. So stay with me and I'll show you how we put this beautiful wreath together. Okay, let's go over the supplies. First of all, this is the sign. This was the inspiration for this piece. Let's see if I can get it out of the glare. So what I did was I used the colors in the sign to dictate what other elements in this wreath I was going to use. There's blues and purples and greens and pinks. So what I did was I went with a pink and purple deco mesh. There's 12 pieces for each of the 12 twist ties in the base. They're 10-inch mesh, meaning this way, by 20 inches in length. I did a frame with the pipe cleaners that match the deeper pink because they're going to be seen on the top. We use a 4-ring frame that's 14 inches. There's 6 on the outside, the pipe cleaners on the outside at the crossbars, and on the inside. They're in between the crossbars on ring 3 and 4. It's important that it's set up like this so that the mesh layers well and keeps it flatter, since it's considered a storm door wreath, even though you can use it anywhere. I've turned all the pipe cleaners on the inner 2 rings towards the inside because I'm going to be using the outer rings first. And then these are the 3 ribbon choices I went with. I went with 2 2.5-inch wide ribbons and 1 1.5-inch wide ribbons. They don't have to match the sign exactly. A lot of times you will see signs where they match ribbon that's been made exactly. You're just looking at the color combinations. You can do all patterns, you can do all solids, you can do all 1.5-inch wide ribbons, you can do all 2.5-inch ribbons, you can do a combo like I'm doing today, and you can do anywhere from 2 to 3 ribbons in your ribbon tails. I've chosen to do 3. These are the colors that I've chosen to go with that. And then I pre-made my bundles. If you want to see how to cut and prep the ribbon, follow along some of my videos that I have for tutorials that are for kits I sell. I go into deep detail on how to do that. The videos at the beginning of 2024 go through me cutting every single piece of material every step of the way. So if you want that detailed of instruction, that'd be a good place to go for that. The more current ones, I've just done about 3 or 4 of each ribbons in front of you to show you how to cut the little design on the end called a dovetail or ducktail. Depends on where you are, what you call it. I also give some troubleshooting so that if you accidentally cut your ribbon incorrectly, I show you how to fix that. In most cases, you can and still be able to use your product. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put pipe cleaners on the back of the sign because there needs to be a way to attach it. There are 2 pipe holes here, but they're going to get covered by the ribbon when I get done, so I won't be using them. This sign is less than 1/4 inch deep, so I can't staple pipe cleaners on the back. So I've chosen to use cable tie mounts. I use these on metal signs as well, even though you can punch holes in them. I just don't like taking the chance of the holes being seen. Sometimes they line up with the pipe cleaners, sometimes they don't. So my go-to is the cable tie mount. Let me show you a little closer how this is set up. Hot glue. I have hot glue on these, but that's not going to hold your sign on the cable tie mount long term. That's designed to hold it while the glue under the cable tie mount cures. You always want to use like a super glue. I like to use the Loctite super glue gel. You put that on the back of the cable tie mount and hold it in place for up to 30 seconds each to adhere it. And then the hot glue is just an extra protection to hold it on while you are working on the project you're working on. You can actually get this on the wreath before the super glue has set. So let me get a couple more pipe cleaners. I'm going to cut 2 in half to put on these cable tie mounts. That will hold the sign on the frame. Let me see. Okay, this one's giving me fits. Why? Okay, I'll go the other way. That was the cut end. Sometimes that makes it more difficult to get through. And I like to have it at the base of the cable tie mount and not the side I've cut, so that I get less resistance when I'm putting it into a wreath. The less you have to fight with your project, the better. It's supposed to be fun, right? You want it to stay that way. So I'm just twisting it a few times so that it doesn't come off of the pipe cleaner. And if you notice, I'm lifting the sign to turn it so that I don't scratch the front of the sign. I'm also putting it on top of the package it came in, also to give it that extra protection while I'm working on it. Always make sure that your workspace is clean before you get started. And here's one of my tips I learned a long time ago. These Swifters get all the glitter and gunk out of your cutting mats. So if you're using a cutting mat, there's another little tidbit for you. Push these to the outside because that's where we want them for when we put it in the wreath. And that's ready to go. I'm just going to leave it upside down for now, so there's no chance of anything damaging the front. And that's our sample. We will still be using these pieces in the wreath itself, but not right now. We're going to start with this. We're going to turn the wreath. And as we're turning the wreath, we're putting the pipe cleaners in a horizontal position. I do this now because if you wait till you have a piece of mesh gathered up in your hand, it's a little more difficult to get it all in to handle all the things at once. So I've got that out of the way. I'll move this over here. There are all sorts of different kinds of deco mesh. This is a poly mesh that's completely plastic, which is great for outside exposure. It's also used heavily, this type of mesh, in the projects made with the UITC board, Unique in the Creek. So if you're curious about what that is, look it up. Unique in the Creek or UITC. Alright, so we always lay our mesh curl side down in this method. And we need to find the center because we want to make sure we gather it correctly. You can either use a ruler, or the simple fast way without tools is to simply fold it in half. Hold the place with your finger and put a chip clip on it. More things from around the house rather than having to buy extra equipment. Then you turn it like I just did, and then you do it once again so you can find your center down here. And you're just going to gather it up into your hands using that chip clip, not just to hold it flat, but to help you stay focused and make sure that you're gathering directly up the middle and not straying to the side. Because once we get to the top, we're going to take that clip off and hold it in our thumb and forefinger loosely to make sure that the edges are matched up. So you have a complete circle before you put it in the frame. And then I always have the pipe cleaner I'm working on in front of me. I like this side better than this one, even though they're technically the same. And I'm going to put this in the wreath vertically. And this is very uncomfortable for me. I'll show you why in a minute. But I'm left-handed. So I try to rotate it so that a right-handed person can see what I'm doing. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these little frayed pieces off. Mesh frays, it's unavoidable. There are some techniques that you can use to minimize it. I don't recommend spraying it with anything. Some people use a wood cutter, a wood burner to cut their mesh when it's all plastic. You don't want to have any fabric in the mesh. If you're using a wood burner, you might start a fire. Don't do that. And you need to make sure you have it on a piece of tempered glass when you cut it so you don't damage everything. And in a well-ventilated area. I do that when I make designs on the UITC boards, but not for this. because you're handling it very little. The less you handle it, the less likely it's going to fray. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that outside cut edge and put it over the inside cut edge. And I do it this way so that all of the cut edges are hidden in the base of the wreath. If I did it, otherwise you'd have more fray. This minimizes the fray. So I'm just making sure everything's nice and fluffed up correctly, but not too fluffy, because this is, after all, a storm door wreath. And if it's not a perfect circle, I grab it right at the base of the pipe cleaner while holding the pipe cleaner with my other hand to bring it out, to even it out. You never pull your mesh from the edge because it changes the design in the mesh, which is not a good look. So and when I do this, I skip it. I do every other. I skip every other. It helps it lay flatter, I find, in this style of wreath. If you're specifically going to use this on a storm door, when you want to keep it as flat as possible, the goal is under 4 inches deep, because that's generally the space you have between a regular door and a storm door slash screen door setup. If you're not putting it behind one of those doors against your regular door, it's not as crucial to make sure it's thin. But that is the original intention of this style of wreath making. There are other ways to make bigger, fluffier wreaths. And if you follow along on my page, you'll see where I've done some. I did a conversation heart one this year that was a swag shape. And it's nice and fluffy. I'm trying to remember some of the others I did, but I'm blanking right now. So we're twisting this tight and low. That also helps it keep it under 4 inches deep. Putting that outside, on top. At this point, I probably should have told you before we started, you should always make sure that you're wearing older clothes and short sleeves whenever possible when you're dealing with mesh, because this stuff right here, is related to Velcro. It will stick to anything and everything, so the less you have exposed to snagging it, the less you'll ruin your clothes and the less you'll put a snag in your mesh. You want to avoid it. Yes, this is fluffier than this one. It happens. It's not a big deal, because once the other layers go on top, that will not be an issue anymore. So I'm skipping one and going to the next. Laying it on the table, I use the edge of the table to uncurl my mesh. A lot of the mesh that is designed out there makes it easier to stay on center when you're ruffling it, because it has a line down the middle. The line goes the other direction, so I definitely had to go with this route to find my center. You can use a ruler, like I said earlier, or if you use the cutting board, you can use the measurements on the cutting board to stay on center as well. But I like to work on my poofs and my wreath base at an angle, if you haven't noticed already. I'm more comfortable when I have the wreath frame like this, but this is still in front of me. And then that was at an angle when I was bringing it into my hands. So I'm going to bring that up. The mesh always goes in vertical. When you're putting the mesh in, the pipe cleaners are always horizontal. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. I always do it 2 to 3 times. Tight and low with the pipe cleaner. Bring that outside cut edge over the inside cut edge. Another thing you can do, if it gets all poofy like this, is grab your mesh a little bit further up and just curl the edges under to get it to stay where you want it and not so poofy. And the most important thing is that the outer edge is nice and circular, because the inside won't be seen. There's a piece of fray. It is what it is. I cut the fray off as I go, so I don't have to go back and find it later. It's done. I don't have to think about it again. But this outside edge needs to be nice and circular. Whenever I make adjustments in it, I grab the pipe cleaner with one hand and I pull at the base of the pipe cleaner. It bears repeating. This one, I think I'm going to try to do the curl under thing, because it's just not. Some of it is because of how I gathered it. Some people do more of an accordion fashion as they're gathering it. It's up to you how you address that. But I don't know why I'm fooling with it, because when we're done, it's all going to be laying flat. So just stop, Marguerite. Move on. All right, so now we're going to go back and do the 3 ties in between those. Using that table again to open it up. Curl side down, always curl side down. This one is ready to come off, so let me just take it off now. I like to do things the hard way, guys. Couldn't have just taken the clip off to begin with, could I? Those were just starting to come out regardless, so I figured I might as well just get it over with, right? Fold it in half. There are so many different style wreaths that you can make, but this is my most popular seller. I learned this from Melissa Morrow from Sincerely Creative Mom. I had recently moved to Nebraska, southwest Nebraska, not far from the Wyoming border. And I started to do some shows, and all my wreaths were big and fluffy. And I got the same responses that she did. I like that, but it won't fit behind the door. It gets smushed. If I don't have it behind the door, it's going to blow off. And in our case, it'll probably end up at the railroad tracks. So she came up with this concept at the perfect timing for me, and I'll tell you, it's predominantly what I sell. And I also teach classes in person using this design as well. It's one of the simpler designs, and I prep all the materials. I have way too much mesh on this side of the pipe cleaner. All right, let's fix that. Doesn't matter how careful you are when you're holding it in your hand. You got to make sure you get it into the wreath right. Now, you can have it wider on the outside of the pipe cleaner than the inside if you want a bigger wreath. Then you would gather it closer to one edge or the other, but you got to make sure you're consistent with them all to make sure you don't have ebbs and flows on the outside of your wreath. But it's a great way to make it a little bit wider. When it's done, it's going to look big and fluffy when you look at it head on. But it's amazing how thin it is. It just works perfectly. So there's that. Let me see. Oh, if there are any supplies you're interested in learning about where to get, message me and I will head you in the direction of one of my providers of supplies. I will let you know out of full transparency. If I put a link in my description, I'm going to get a little thank you from that company if you buy anything from them. So thank you if you do so. Any questions otherwise, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions I can. If I don't have the answer, I'll try to find out. And if I just can't, I will be honest with you about that. Okay. So there we go. We got one more to do on this layer, and then we get to start playing with the ribbon. That's always my favorite part. But the mesh is very important because it's your solid foundation. A lot of the people in the industry refer to it as the bra of your wreath. It's the solid foundation that keeps everything lifted up. It's funny, but it's true. Because the ribbon is your sign are the stars of the show. Now, with the basic storm door style wreaths that I'm making right here, there's no additional elements, meaning a bow or anything like that. You can certainly add all that, but you just have to remember that if you add all that, it's not really a storm door wreath anymore, because if you put a bow on it, it's going to be a little thicker than 4 inches. I mean, if you're careful when you close your door, it will lay your ribbon in the bow down a little flat, but not noticeably. That's entirely up to you whether you want to do it or not. But this style is also great in lots of other places, and in those circumstances, you definitely would be fine with... Oh, there's some big frays. You would be fine with the bow. Okay, there we have it. So now we're going to go around and we're going to put the pipe cleaners vertical, because the ribbon is going to go in horizontal. Trim as we go if as needed. Again, I do this ahead of time so I'm not struggling when I'm putting more product in here, like the ribbon. Okay, so that's all set. We don't need the clip right now. I'm going to take the first 6 bundles. I'm going to use this one as well. Nope, I'm using it at the top. I'm fickle. I'm going to say it's 3, 6. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to work in this pipe cleaner closest to me. And I'm going to open my bundle of ribbon that I've already prepped and put the V's in the end, the dovetails. I'm going to gather it at the crease in the center where we folded it. And then I'm going to pinch it into my thumb and forefinger and bring the ends of the ribbon down towards the end of the table. So to you right now, it looks like a V. To me, it's upside down V, inverted. I do that because it helps to do it at this point before you put it in the frame so that your ribbon stays pointing to the outside of the wreath. It's going to creep under a little bit, but we correct that at the end. We try to handle, just like with the mess, we try to handle the ribbon as little as possible. So we get that in there. We're going to put that in there tight and low with the twist 2 or 3 times. But then we twist it in an upward fashion so that we can cut off the excess. I didn't realize I didn't spend it back out. I apologize, guys. I get all into it and get excited and I forget what I'm doing. Alright, I'm going to have the green as my center color. So I'm going to lift the top 2 ribbons up and place the green. And then I'm going to bring out each of the other 2 and put my finger up towards the base of the pipe cleaner to pop those little bubbles out. So on this side I did blue on top and pink floral down towards me. On this layer only, I'm going to do the opposite on each side. So I'm bringing that up. Green will stay in the center. This time the floral will go to the top and the blue gingham will go towards the bottom. And then I usually run my fingers over it. Don't make it too curly on the bottom layer because it's not going to be able to stay that way. You need it to come out to the edge of the frame. So I like to hold it in the middle, holding it down a little bit while I pull the ribbons out. That also helps to keep it flatter so that all the tips are facing the outside of the wreath. And you notice I'm not handling it from the very tips of the ribbon because just like mesh, ribbon frays, it's just not as much. Just like with any of the stuff in this project, the less you handle the product, the less chance you're going to get fray. So again, just like with the mesh, I'm going to do every other. So I'm doing this one, flip it, put it in the frame. Twist it tight and low 2 to 3 times, and then twist it in an upward fashion to get about a 1-inch twist. Cut the excess off, tuck it in. Now you can wait to cut until you have them all in on this layer, but I like to do it as I go so that I don't forget. I still forget sometimes. So I got those all lifted and separated and put in their positions. Getting the wrinkles out. The green is fine where it's at on this side. I'm just gonna, nope, wrong way. You can do them all exactly the same if you want. I just like to mix it up because it gives it more dimension that way. I'm gonna hold it there and get that position. We're going over here. Next bundle. There we go. So that will be the first 3 bundles of ribbon tails. Cut that excess off. And I'm not throwing that stuff on the floor, although some stuff is on the floor. I have a trash can right there. So we're going to lift, separate, fluff. Lift, separate, and fluff. Ooh, I got a little bit strong arm there and pulled it out from the other side a little bit. I have to even that back up. There we go. That just means that I didn't twist my pipe cleaner tight enough initially before I cut it when I was doing the tight and low twists. but it's nothing I couldn't come back from. Okay, so let's do the final 3 on this layer. They're going to be exactly the same. They're just laying on the bundles besides them. Do that inverted V. Place it in the frame. You notice I'm bringing the wreath to me and not reaching out across the wreath. And upwards. Cut the excess off. Tuck it in. Alright. We are going to lift and separate. Smooth it out. And another thing that I really haven't said in any of my videos lately, you need to make sure you're only using wired ribbon, because otherwise it'll be really floppy when it comes to the ribbon. It won't look good. It's okay to use a little bit of unwired ribbon in a bow, but make sure you place it either at the back of a bow or in between a couple layers of wired ribbon so that it doesn't flop all over the place. The wire also allows you to curl up the bow tails cutesy on like curly cues or like curls in your hair. So many options. Get that tucked in there. Lift and separate. And I apologize if you hear any noise in the background. This is a busy home sometimes with my husband, my dog, and my dad. At least you can't hear the train since I'm in a basement. There's always seems to be a train. Get this last one in for this layer. Tight and low the first 3 twists, and then twist up towards the ceiling to get a 1-inch twist. Cut off the excess, throw it in the trash, tuck the stub in, the twist, play with that to get the little bubbles out, lift and separate to place them in the position that you want them in. I run my fingers over the wires as I'm positioning them so that there's no wrinkles or kinks in them, so to speak. What's the right word? I'm just going to say bent, twisted, whatever. Alright, make sure these are all good, and I'm going to put it up for you to see. And now what I'm going to do is put the next and last 6 pieces of mesh in. I'm going to bring those other set of 6 pipe cleaners up in between each 2 pieces of mesh and spread them out so they're ready for me to put that mesh in them. They like to hide. Bring that up, spread them out. Bring them up, spread them out. Is that a fray or is it just loose? It's loose. Bring that up, spread it out. That's 4 of them. I got 2 to go. Bring them up and spread them out. There we go. So now we're ready for the next 6 pieces of mesh. Remembering always the curl side goes down on the table. I use that table to uncurl it. Fold this in half. Clip the center. And then fold it in half and gather up the center. You can do either 2-handed ruffles or one-handed like I'm doing and hold the mesh down with the other hand. Loosely in the thumb and forefinger hold it. Make sure your edges line up so it's a circle. You're going to bring it over to your pipe cleaners, which are horizontal. You're putting the mesh in vertically. Tight and low. And now you have all that lower layer to contend with. Still want to do the 3 twists. You're going to do the outside cut edge over the inside cut edge. Outside cut edge over the inside cut edge. Once all this, I was going to say all this Velcro's in, all this mesh is in, it's going to stick to itself on the lower layers. Let me adjust this a little bit. So it's not going to move unless you really fuss with it, and I can't imagine any reason you need to fuss with it once it's in place. This one has a couple frays. That one came right off. I thought I saw another one. That's still not straight. It's still not even. Is it even now? Yes. And don't worry about that. It's going to be held down with the sign. Again, we're going to skip every other. I'm not going to do any close-ups because I don't want to mess up and have you not see how I'm doing this like I did the first time around. It's also important, and I haven't mentioned it, that you have at least 3 feet of working space. This cutting mat is 3 foot by 2 foot. My table is about 5.5 feet by 4.5 feet. You want to keep as much out of the way as possible because, like I said, this mesh is like Velcro. As you're turning your wreath, you'll end up attaching everything on the table with it. So always try to keep things out of the way. Okay, I did that one, so it's this one. Since I'm doing every other. Tight and low. 1, 2, 3. Outside cut edge over the inside cut edge. Outside edge over the inside cut edge. Just make sure everything's lined up, your edges are even. Make any adjustments you need right there. And move on to the next one. So we're skipping. I bring the pipe cleaners back up too so they're ready for the ribbon. We're going to do this one next. I love the spring colors. I love all the other holidays, but you know, by the time spring gets here, I'm ready for these pastels. Well, by the time the summer's here, I'm ready for the red, white, and blue. Not a big deal. What's nice with this mesh too, it's easy to cut straight because all the lines go this way, so when you're cutting it, you have a perfect template for cutting it. Each kind of mesh has its own benefit. There's fabric mesh, there's this, there's deco mesh that's plastic with tinsel in it, polypropylene. Did I say it right that time? I think I did. Turn it that way. I did that one. So, oh, it's this one. Keep doing that. Getting ahead of myself. Not a problem. 2, 3, tight and low. Step out of the way. Outside cut edge over inside cut edge. Outside cut edge over inside cut edge. Alright. That needs to come down a little bit here because more of it's on the inside than the outside. So I'm going to hold that pipe cleaner and grab it at the base of the pipe cleaner. That needs to come out right here to even back up. And it's good. You could take it out and re-ruffle it, but chances are you're still going to have to fix it once it gets in there. So as long as you're not too rough with it, just adjust the mesh once it's in the frame. 2 to go. curl side down, fold it in half to find your center. Fold it in half, find your center, ruffle, ruffle, ruffle. I like this side better, so I'm going to go in for that on the outside. Put that in there. Right down the center. So it's uneven on each side of the pipe cleaners. Making this tight. What's nice about these videos too for you is you can stop and start them at any time to rewind or go ahead, or if you're struggling for some reason with making one on your own, you can watch a section over and over again, especially the tutorials I have for the kits. They're more detailed, so you can get a little bit more detailed. And then that's the last one, so we'll use it. I always go, oh, I'm missing one. No, I have the sample. A lot of the time I will make a sample poof with the ribbon to put up next to the sign so I can make sure that the colors look right and the designs work well. As long as they're the colors that are in the sign, it can be all sorts of different designs, no problem. I tend to have the habit of breaking up patterns with a solid color ribbon, which I did in this project. You don't have to do that. You could, like I said earlier, you can do all solid colors, you can do all prints. I'm left-handed, so this is really awkward to cut that off, but I need to get out of the way. So yeah. Okay. There you go. But you can definitely see why it's important to have the pipe cleaners already positioned when you're putting the mesh in, because if you're like me, you like to use two hands to put the mesh in, to hold on to it. Last thing I want to do is lose my grip. What is this? What's going on here, people? Alright. Got that cleaned up. So outside cut edge over inside cut edge. Outside cut edge over inside cut edge. Alright. Let me grab there. Alright. Lift that up, and last but not least, stay down. Okay, we're going to use this one. Take it out of the sample. We're going to use those. Grab and get this off. And I'm going to put that in right here. The colors on this remind me of a dragonfly wreath that I made for a custom order. So stay tuned. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a dragonfly wreath this year. If you're watching this in chronological order, it'll probably be the end of April, beginning of May. I haven't decided yet. Outside cut edge or inside cut edge. It's almost taking on the hue of the blue a little bit because it's sitting behind the mesh. Pardon. But it is a lavender and kind of a peachy pink. Looks more pink than peach though, so that's why I was okay using it. Okay, now it's time to make a decision on whether we want to put the ribbon in next or the sign. My decision today is put in the sign first because it's a round sign. It doesn't have a design to it. So putting the ribbon over the top edges will frame it more. I don't always recommend putting the ribbon on first unless you have a sign that has a design to it and you don't want to hide the shape. Like if it were a heart, you'd want to be able to see that it was the shape of a heart. Then I would put the ribbon on first. So what I always do is I put one set of pipe cleaners at 12 o'clock and one set at 6 o'clock for me. That way I know where the very center of the wreath is. And then I place my sign in there. And usually I put a pipe cleaner at 12 and 6 o'clock on the sign, so that helps me line it up with the 12 and 6 o'clock. And then the other two are on the sides. Square signs are handled differently. You'll have to look for one of my tutorials with a square sign to see how I do that. And when I attach them to the frame through the mesh, I always put them through on an X pattern. I don't go around in a circle to attach them. I go top to bottom, left to right in an X fashion, so that my sign, once it's in here, is settled flat and not way in the wreath on one side and way up on the other. This really helps to do that correctly. I also put the packaging it came with on the sign, which I have it placed where I want it, to flip it so that the sign once again doesn't get scratched on the table. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my favorite little tool that doesn't come with the kits. I get these on Amazon. They are a plastic embroidery needle. These are 6 inches long. You can just feed the pipe cleaners through all the product to the back of the wreath, but sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle. This takes all the struggle out of the issue. So I put it through all the way to the back of the wreath, and I tend to bring the wreath off the table a little bit. All the way through, just slightly under the sign, so that I can put the pipe cleaner through it and fold it at the top. I lift my wreath and I pull it all the way through and off of that. Super easy. Then I'll turn it around. Do the same thing on this side at the other end. Put it through. You don't have to take it off the edge of the table. You could just lift it like this on the table. But just a habit. Just my habit. So now I'm going to put that on the top. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to connect these to the frame first. And I'm just going to wrap the pipe cleaner around the frame until it's completely used up. Usually this first ring, and I'm going to make sure the tip is facing back down in the wreath so I don't scratch somebody's door when it gets hung up. I'm going to lift it and lay that back down underneath. And then I'm putting a little pressure on the wreath before I tighten up the pipe cleaner, because I want the sign to settle into the wreath a little, but not suck it all in. That's not a pretty look. But enough that it stays in place. So now I'm going to turn it over. So these two are now done. We're going to do these two. I'm going to put that in through the wreath all the way to the back, making sure that I am not putting it through any ribbon. That's important too. Do not stab your ribbon. You don't want to damage it. So let's see. Put that over the tip. Lift it up. Pull it through. Get it off with the needle. Turn it around and do this final one. Lifting it up off the table a little, making sure the needle goes through a little bit of an angle so that it stays under the sign. Fold that over the needle, pull it through. Okay, put the needle away. Alright, so now everything's in there. I'm going to put this back on and flip it over and attach these two pipe cleaners to the frame. Putting a little pressure on it so that it's flush with the sides. Some people cut off the excess of the pipe cleaner. I don't recommend that, because if for some reason you need to take it off. I have had people come back to me with their wreath, having been through the sunny seasons for, several years, loving the sign. The sign's still in great condition, and we just need to build them a new base. There's some recycling, right? Nothing wrong with that. While we have it turned over, we're going to look for any more pieces of fray to get that off of there. It was created when we were building the wreath. Completely normal. may have hit the floor that time. There's one here. And I thought I saw one here. There we go. So now I don't need this anymore because we don't have to turn it over anymore, so I'll throw that away. Alright. And it's time to put the ribbon in again. Now, especially in a round wreath sign, I always do the 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock pipe cleaners last because I like the way the ribbon lays over the bundles besides it. So I'm going to start here. That ribbon needs to be horizontal. So the pipe cleaners are vertical. I'm gathering it up the center. This time I'm not doing the inverted V because I really want to spread out the ribbon and cover a lot more of the mesh. 3 times tight. And then I'm going to put it up in the air out of the way for the moment, and then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I am going to position my ribbon so that the green is in the center, and I'm putting this blue and white gingham up here, the green in the middle, running my fingers along the edges to keep it nice and smooth. I'm bringing the floral down here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. We always lift and separate the ribbon so we get the maximum effect all the way up to the pipe cleaner. And then once I get this done, I like to put a little more poof in it. You can even use a dowel to give it even more curl. You can do 1 or all 3 at the same time. It's still going to lay nice and flat without looking smushed behind a screen or storm door. And now I'm going to take these and I'm going to even the length on them because I'm going to make little curls. You can do what you did on the bottom layer and twist them up and cut off excess that's not twisted. Tuck it behind the ribbon so all you see is a stub of ribbon in the center. Not ribbon, pipe cleaner. Or you can do what I'm doing. You can do this 2 different ways. You curl the inside piece towards the sign and you curl the outside piece towards you. And you can either leave it here like that or you can pull it out a little bit to give it a little whimsy, the little curl. But I like it flattened and in the center. That's just me. It also makes a great base to add hot glue to it if you want to add embellishments. This would be a great place to put some florals in. And it would still be a storm wreath as long as the florals don't stick up and beyond the 4 inches. Today I'm not doing that with this one. So I did that one. Top and bottom center. Get left alone for now. So I did that one right. I'm going to do this one next. And I'm going to flip the floral in the blue. Meaning on this one the floral is going to be right next to the sign and the blue gingham is going to be to the outside. I like to mix it up when I can. You can only do this when you have an even number of pipe cleaners or twist ties. If you have an odd number, you have to make sure your bundles are all the same, or you're going to end up with 2 exactly the same right next to each other. That's okay if you're planning to add a bow, but if you are not, or you don't care, but yeah, you would do that. And fluff these out, and I did it because I was talking a lot. I'm going to flip it. I could have done them all the same, wouldn't be a problem, but I really wanted to do both. And I'm still trying to do it. I usually record 2 tutorials a day, so I think I'm falling back on what I did in the last one. Make sure they're cut evenly. You don't have to make sure they're cut evenly. That's just me. Everything I teach you on these tutorials is somewhat subjective. You can change things up and do things your own way. I just try to give you good guidance to begin with, to start with, or give you new ideas in case you want to do something different. So those 2 are done. I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. So there'll be this one first, then this one, so that the pattern remains. You don't have to do it like this. You could just put one in and then you just put them all the way around in a circle. I just like the pattern and the look of the pattern that it has when I do it this way. Now see, even though this is a different red than on the pink than is on the ribbon, it matches the deeper colors on the sign. So that's the bottom line. You're looking to make sure that it coordinates. It's not, doesn't have to be perfectly matchy-matchy. You're looking to make sure the colors all do well. And honestly, not all the ribbons have to match the sign color-wise. You can even pick some ribbons that match the mesh. As long as everything works together, it's all good. Hopefully you didn't hear that. I am not hungry, I just ate. My tummy is telling me otherwise, but... This has got a very spring look. One of my favorite holidays when I was a kid was Easter. And yes, I still decorate for it, and yes, we still color eggs. You're never too old. We're always somebody's kids, so there's no reason why we can't continue to do that fun stuff. Stay. Okay, doing this one next. We're going to make that vertical. Get that in that twist tie. Twist, twist, twist. So now this time, the floral will be in the center. Lift these up, separate. Turn it so I can work on this one. Green in the center. Blue on the outside, floral on the inside. Get those little bubbles out. Alright, so now it's time to do 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. I'm going to use this over here because this is just not as fluffy as the other ones. It's bugging me. There we go. Just bugging me. When I get it done, I will stand up at the end to look at it as well. I always recommend once it's finished, you take a picture of it with your phone and take a look at how it looks there, because the camera sees it differently than your naked eye. I'm not sure of the science behind that, but it's absolutely a fact. That way, if there's anything out of place, you can make an adjustment. So the floral's on the outside. Okay. So green in the center, gingham on the inside, floral on the outside. We always want to make sure we're not covering up any of the words on the sign. That would be another example of when you'd probably want to put your ribbon on before the sign so that you don't cover up any words. But this is good enough that this works well enough because the words are in the very center of the sign. Curl that up. And I'm not covering all the flowers in the picture. And I didn't do this on that one. What? What? Okay, let's go back and fix that. And I didn't cut it either. Get that taken care of, please. Thank you. Twist away from me on the inside pipe cleaner. Twist towards me on the outside pipe cleaner. There we go. And last but not least, the bottom center, so 6 o'clock. Come on, come on. Thank you. Got that all gathered. Oop, get those open. This is, I think, waterproof because of the way it feels. I don't know if it's MDF or if it's a waterproof sign. It's hard to tell sometimes. Alright, I'm going to cut it now so I don't forget. There we go. Don't need that anymore, so I'll put those away. I need this still. Okay, so let's get this show on the road. These final two sides. There we go. Blue out, floral in. Okay. So pretty. Okay. Lift and separate. Blue down, floral up. Use this to give it a nice curl. See how curly that gets? I learned that from an actual student. I am never too old to learn something new, right? Okay. I'll do this side because now it looks flat compared to the other one. Do this last one standing up because I gotta get up anyway to take a look at everything. A lot of people do all their creating standing up. I just can't. My body won't allow. So I get up, I sit down, I get up, I sit down. Put that away. Fluff that out. Now, if I were for sure putting it behind a storm door, I wouldn't fluff it as much. But when I'm doing a show, I like to show how fluffy it can really get, and then I explain that it can lay flatter without flattening everything out. Alright, so there's that. I'm going to sit back down for a second because I'm going to go around the wreath. And I'm going back to the bottom layer by lifting up the mesh away from the ribbon so I can make sure it's all pulled back out to the edge of the wreath. Pulling the mesh on the top layer up and away allows me to pull the ribbon out without snagging it, which is important. We don't want the wreath to look damaged before we even get it in front of anybody. That's something you should always practice if you're doing this to sell. Get that mesh out of the way, because if you just pull on the ribbon, the ribbon's going to snag the mesh, and the mesh is going to snag the ribbon. Ribbon's going to snag, yeah, I said that right, didn't I? The mesh is going to snag the ribbon, and the ribbon's going to snag the mesh. Yep. These went way up under there, so I have to bring those out. Okay. This particular ribbon selections, these three, are pretty smooth, so they don't tend to snag things very easily, but let's not take a chance. There's the third one. It's way up there. Get back down here. It's trying to run away. Okay. There's that. There's that. This one's hiding too. Some of them really crept up. That's why you go back at the end like this and pull that. And if you notice, I'm not handling any of the ribbon from the tips because it can fray too. So we want to avoid that. I think that I've been all the way around and then some. Oh, I just love these colors. I almost feel like I need to shut the light off. Okay, where is that? That's sticking out. So that one's sticking way out. And I saw that in the camera. Did I fix it, or do I need to... Still needs to go under. You know what I think? I think the mesh is too far out. I think that's what giving me the illusion that the ribbon is too far out. Let's see if that made a difference. Well, there you have it, a storm door wreath that is perfect for the Easter holiday season, bright and colorful. So it's very springy. No reason why you can't leave it up after the Easter holiday for sure. If you like what you saw, you can subscribe to this channel and you'll get to see a bunch of other videos, including tutorials for actual kits that I sell. I average about one a month, most of the major holidays. And those tutorials, as well as this and every other tutorial in my YouTube channel, are premiered on Sundays at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So if you subscribe, you'll receive notifications of that. You could also follow me on Facebook. I also notify everybody each week when the new videos are coming out. Everything will be in the description as far as where you can purchase this finished wreath. Since it's not a kit, it's available in the Etsy shop as of the moment that I release the video. Also, I know that you have all sorts of things you can be doing with your time, but you're spending a little of your day with me, watching me do this, learning something new, and that's very much appreciated. So I thank you once again for joining me today. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and I hope you've learned something new that you're more interested in doing than ever. I know a lot of creators don't do the storm door wreath. This is really a great affordable wreath to put in your shop as well. So give it a shot if you haven't done it before. Sky's the limit. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day. Bye.